They may have probed me, but at least they gave me this pretty sweet rig. Alienware has always been controversial. Some people, or noobs as people in the PC gaming community call them, really like them, and then anybody who's ever built a PC before hates them because, well, they seem to be plastic overpriced garbage. But this one was quite interesting because of its RGB implementation. As you could see from the footage that I played earlier, it's one of the first ever Aurora ones, and it's from like 2008, 2009, around that period, and it has some pretty ballin' RGB in it. So, is it just plastic garbage, or is it way ahead of its time when it comes to the bling? But, as you can see from the screen behind me, with its overclocking failed warning, it wasn't all rose-tinted glasses and happiness. It actually all started pretty terribly when I found out that they lied to me about what graphics cards were in it. Specs-wise, it's rocking an X58 platform with 16 gigs of RAM and an i7-920 in it. And I was told that it had two GTX 280s in it, but they lied to me and it only has two GTX 260s in it. But let's open it up, take it apart, and have a look what it looks like inside. So now let's crack open the Alienware Aurora like a week-old ham. I have to admit, I actually had to Google how to open this case because it doesn't make any sense. But there's this kind of like slot thing here, which you then use to push that up. So this back panel here, and then it comes off. And it comes off like that. And as you can tell, it's absolutely massive. If you just have a quick look at the side panel, it's super thick and very heavy. Yeah, that's pretty cool. You've got like alien-y symbols on there. The thing that immediately strikes you when looking past of any of the kind of random plastic crap that they have everywhere is this just looks like a server case. It really looks like they just kind of took a server case and glued a bunch of plastic crap to it. So let's try and get further inside. So I think the first thing I'm going to try and do is get this bracket off that's over the graphics card so that we can have a look at that setup. I gotta think, wait. Oh, there we go, that's quite elegant. Here are the two GPUs which I was lied to about what they are. That's always very exciting. It's really interesting that they went with an M80X motherboard, so it's a smaller motherboard, and then they have like 15 foot of space in front of that. If you look down here, you can see there's a huge amount of hard drive slots available, and then you can put a bunch of 3.5-inch front drives in. I just made a pretty awesome discovery because I saw that all of the SATA cables were plugged in, but there's only one hard drive, so that didn't really make sense. But all of these hard drive bays are actually hot swap. So if you look in there, you can see the SATA power and SATA cable, or plug there, so you can just slide a hard drive in. I'm really curious to see what they did with the actual airflow implementation here, because it kind of looks like there's no air coming through to the graphics cards. So with the two GPUs set up like this, the top one's not really getting any airflow. So you have to use quite a bit of force to get this off. Sorry, I didn't get that on camera. And then when you look in the back here, you've got a fan that blows on the graphics cards over there. And then also looking in there, you can kind of see the front I/O configuration, which isn't hugely neat. They basically just have a huge amount of cables that they kind of stuck in there. Again, this could have been done way more neatly. But this PC is very old, so I don't know how much of the cable management and stuff is down to somebody else digging around in it. Because you can also see here, those cables, that's just a huge cable mess down there. Now I think Kyle from Bitwit wouldn't be very happy with this case design because it's ketchup and mustard for days. Look at that. This main board here, or this circuit board here, kind of seem like they're for the RGB implementation, which is something that's really interesting on this case, because it's really old. I mean, this is before the RGB craze, and they obviously went to a huge amount of effort to get the RGB working in the way that it does. Now, this whole kind of AIO configuration here, so that they can call it liquid cooled, it just looks like a kind of standard Acertec cooler. It doesn't look like anything particularly fancy. But then they kind of have the Alienware head, and they've got some you know, extra plastic garbage on it to make it look more alien-y. And I think that's why people have such a huge issue with Alienware product is, you know, there is a lot of attention to detail, but in the end of the day, they are just sticking a bunch of plastic to stuff that you normally don't have to pay as much for. Weirdly enough, though, this only has 5 sticks of RAM in. I don't know where this guy went. I kind of really want to just take off the entire screw on each side at a time just to piss off the internet, but... Ooh! There's like barely any thermal paste on that. It's not good. That is a seriously fat fan. Look at it! It's huge! So now I'm gonna take all of this and I'm gonna clean all of it and put some new thermal stuff everywhere. I feel a bit stupid that I didn't put the thermal that I didn't do thermal tests beforehand, but you know, what's done is done. I'll take Tech Yes City's Brian's word for the fact that it's gonna make a pretty big difference. And unfortunately, I'm not gonna clean it with brake fluid cleaner because I'm not that ratchet. Okay, so it's the beginning of day 568 million of the making of this video, and I just can't seem to finish it. But I'm gonna try and do that today. So having a look here, I've kind of, and it's all gonna be very out of focus initially. There we go, that's a bit better. So I've kind of finished putting everything back on the motherboard, and it's ready to completely reassemble the PC, and we're gonna try play some games on it. Now let's get started, and I think we can do it with a good old-fashioned time-lapse. I've finished installing the motherboard, reinstalling the block, and as you can see, the alien head is actually pointing up now. And it's done. It doesn't look worse than it did when I started, which is, I guess, a minimum requirement, but I'm still pretty happy with that. One of the problems with that case is that everything is kind of routed in a way that it kind of just has to go that way. So you have to have this huge amount of cables lying around. And I think one of the reasons that Dell didn't worry too much about the cable management situation is because you can't see into the case. But considering what it looks like in the front, in front of the GPUs, I think that situation airflow-wise is really bad. And we'll have a look at the temperatures a little bit later. Okay, so now with all of the faffing out of the way, we can actually look at how this PC performs. And as you can see back here, it doesn't do very well because I couldn't get it to start up in the last 45 minutes or so, and that's because I overclocked it and then something went wrong and now it just isn't working anymore. Now, it's got two big problems when overclocking. One is the fact that its fan speed implementation in the Alienware software is really bad. It doesn't give you control over how fast the fan spins of the Acertec AIO. It just spins way too slowly. So when I overclocked the CPU, it was running at about 100 degrees at 3.6 gigahertz, which is completely unacceptable. It was stable though. But then when I kind of tripped the plug in the thing for the fan speed controller, it actually went running at 100% fan speed, but then it's so loud that it bothers neighbors 4 doors down. But it did perform way better. It was sitting at about 70 degrees. The problem is you can't seem to overclock it further than that. And you can't overclock it further than that because of the actual VRM implementation on the motherboard. Or I got a really bad i7-920 variant. And then as far as actual performance metrics goes, in Cinebench it performs the way 920s do, overclocked to 3.6 gigahertz. It's not the most insane CPU for kind of productivity tasks, but you can still game on it. Although you can't game on this machine because pretty much nothing worked. I couldn't play anything that was made after Skyrim, basically. Skyrim really struggled. It was playable at like low settings, but really playable at low settings. And the same went for Dota 2. Dota 2 worked, but it was, again, you had to drop the settings way down, and then it was still really not that pleasant a gaming experience. Crysis ran, but not very well. Now, before somebody tells me to just put a better GPU in it, first of all, stop heckling me. And number two, it just is a really bad value. Even though the system is very old, it still does have an Alienware tax to it, which means that you could get the same specs for way cheaper if you just buy the parts individually off of eBay. And the problem with how bad the motherboard is, it means that you can't grab the system by the balls and squeeze all the performance out of it because you can't get further than 3.6 gigahertz, which is just ridiculous. And that very brief overview is pretty much all I'm going to talk about when it comes to the actual performance of this machine. If you want a more detailed breakdown, let me know in the comment section below, and I could do a follow-up video, but the fact of the matter is it sucks for gaming, and at this point, no one's gonna buy it to use as a main rig. The reason I thought this was an interesting topic for a video was because of its RGB implementation. I know that sounds like a ridiculous thing, but it came out so long ago. It came out before anybody was talking about RGB, and it does it fairly spectacularly. You have amazing control in the software of how to light the various zones, and it's pretty cool, to be honest. Maybe it was too ahead of its time. I remember people talking about how flashy the Alienware machines were because they had this RGB implementation. And it's really interesting that it's almost as though Dell set a standard for RGB before they even knew, or anyone else even knew, that it was gonna be a thing later down the line. And I think that that's pretty interesting. And what more can I ask for in a video like this? Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, do like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. If you dislike the video, dislike it, and then let me know what you disliked about the video and what kind of content you'd like to see from the channel in the future. I know I've been gone for a while, sorry about that, but I'll be making regular content again from now, potentially. Anyway, until the next one, bye-bye.